Good evening and welcome to the Vineland Board of Education regular session meeting for Wednesday, March 8th, 2017. Roll call, Ms. Haley.
Ms. Acosta?
Here.
Ms. Cottaspati?
Present.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Here.
Mr. Medio?
Here.
Mr. Pagano?
Here.
Ms. Rios?
Present.
Mr. Sobrana?
Present.
Mr. Boardley?
Present.
Mr. Jennings?
Present. In compliance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law, commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law, the Vineland Board of Education has caused notice and posting of this meeting to be sent to the following, announcing time and place thereof, agenda, etc. The Daily Journal, the Press of Atlantic City, the Grapevine, the Clerk of the City for the City of Vineland, and Administrative Office Public Bulletin Board. We have Wallace Intermediate School, which will be helping us with the flag salute. Wallace, are you here today? Lauren Ruiz, Anthony Tees, come on up front.
Come up front, please.
You're going to be leading us in the flag salute.
Please stand.
Everyone stand, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have certificates for you.
Campbell?
Is it under that, maybe? No.
You could ask. What's this for?
Thank you. Do we have resolution for executive session?
We do not.
Thank you. And Mr. Frangipani, special presentations?
We do. We do have a special presentation tonight from Ms. Hope Johnson, the proud principal of Veterans Memorial Middle School. Will honor students participating in the All South Jersey Band. Ms. Johnson?
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor this evening to congratulate 4 of our wonderful students at Veterans Memorial School for participating in the All South Jersey Band this past Sunday, March 5th, at Fernwood Middle School in Egg Harbor Township. Jonathan Chu, could you please stand, was on trombone. Adrian Ferrer on trumpet. Roderick Zupanto on clarinet. And Timothy Latushka, alto saxophone. On behalf of Mr. Zazzarini, who could not be here tonight, congratulations, and we're very proud of you.
Come up for pictures. Students, come up for pictures, please.
And we have certificates to present to you.
I don't know if there's any light on here.
I gotta do it for Gia. Thank you.
Next, we have Mrs. Tammy Monahan, the proud principal of the Rossi Middle School, will acknowledge staff and students for the successful 2016-2017 Juvenile Diabetes Research Fund Kids Walk to Cure Diabetes. Ms. Monahan?
Thank you. So I'd like to first thank Central Administration and the Board of Education for allowing me to be here today to talk about our Rossi students, staff, community. So to begin, I want to thank all those, as I said, who assisted with this event, contributed to the JDRF calls, and those people were our Rossi staff, our students, our families, and our community members, and our local vendors. Without all of these individuals, this event would not be possible. I also want to mention and thank our local radio station, Sojo 1049. They have come out each and every year for this event. They play music for the children and give out prizes, and they make that event just extra fun and special for the participants. And they've been involved all the way back since I first ran this event at Vineland High School. So I'd like to also thank the representative from JDRF who came out to the school and did a very nice presentation for our staff and students to educate them on diabetes and its prevention. And last, and certainly not least, I want to take a moment to thank our wonderful, dedicated teacher, excellent teacher, there are none better, Mrs. Amato, who takes on this planning each and every year and really does all of the legwork. So this would not be possible without her. So Mrs. Amato, do you want to come up? Where's the...
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for inviting me back to honor Rossi School and the students and the family and the staff that have done our juvenile diabetes walk. This is our 6th year that we participated in this walk for a cure. And this year we had more than a third of our school's population participating in the walk, which, you know, was quite a turnout. Each student had to donate a minimum of $5 in order to participate. And every year, it never ceases to amaze me how much we're able to raise. This year, our total was $3,139 for our 2016 walk. And our grand total for the past 6 years to help cure diabetes has been $17,855.75. So once again, I'm humbled by the outpouring of support for this cause. I have been a diabetic for 26 years now, and I wear an insulin pump so I can lead a normal life. But I hope that our efforts each year will help the researchers find a cure for this disease. I received an email the other day that states that doctors are right now researching beta cell regeneration drug therapies to help people with type 1 diabetes, that they would regulate their own insulin, and something that can absolutely revolutionize those of us living with T1D. It's critical that we find money to support this research. So each year that I'm asked to do this, I take it on, and each year it's gotten bigger and better. And honestly, this year it was kind of easy. Being our 6th year, it ran very smoothly. We had, again, many donations from local businesses. The Walmart on Landis and Delsey, ShopRite on Landis and Delsey, and the Wawa Corporation all donated gift cards and or water for our participants. And we also had pretzels from the Pretzel Factory, and even my hairdresser, Kelly Fennon from Maria's Hair Salon, donated Kind bars for the students and money towards a donation. So it's with this continued support that I'm able to run this each year. So tonight I invited a few of our top donators to come up, and if you would come up when I call your name. I have Madison Battiato with over $300 that she raised. Jean Reynolds with $75. Juliana Trungone with $210. And Luke Vistano with $300. So I'd like to thank my administration, of course, Tammy and Mike, and the staff at Rossi School, and our families, and everyone who supported me and the JDRF. So thanks again.
Mr. Jennings. Mr. Jennings, could I say something? I'd like to thank them personally for doing this. I have a niece who we found out had type 1 juvenile diabetes when she was 4. She too wears an insulin pump, so I know she participates in walks, and we sponsor her too. So thank you very much. It's important that we get this research, and to all the students and the staff and the families that have done this, thank you so very much. It means a lot to those of us who have family members with diabetes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Jennings, I'd also like to say a word on this.
Mr. Sabrana, go ahead.
First of all, congratulations to Ms. Amato and Ms. Monahan and the whole staff and the students at Rossi School for this great effort, which has gone on for so many years now. This is also something that's touched my family because I have a family member who is type 1 diabetic. I'm also proud to tell you that my niece is an MIT researcher who's actually working on the project that Ms. Amato was talking about. So every single day goes by, we hope and pray for this cure.
Thank you, Mr. Sabrana. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Thank you. We'll move on with the,
Our student board liaison.
sorry, go ahead.
Our student board liaison, is she here this evening? Oh, okay. Our student board liaison, I'm sorry, from Vineland High School, the senior class, Emily Cagnon will give an update.
Good evening. My name is Emily Cagnon, and I am the secretary of the senior class at Vineland High School. I will be speaking on behalf of our president, Gracie Galan, because she was not able to attend tonight due to play practice for Sister Act. And speaking of Sister Act, opening night is tomorrow at 7 p.m. The show will continue on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m., and there will also be a matinee at 2 p.m. on Saturday. We can hope you guys can make it out and see all the talented students we have at Vineland High School. Our next event coming up is Dancing with the Staff. The show will be held on March 31st at 7 p.m. 8 seniors will compete with their teachers, and Project Graduation would like to formally invite you to this great event. The senior class is also preparing for some events like Grad Night, which will take place at Six Flags on June 9th, the Senior Picnic, the Senior Trip, which is to the Poconos this year, and, of course, prom. We've also completed our senior shirt orders, and they will be available shortly. That's most of the new things we have going on right now, and thank you for your time, and Gracie and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Finally, we have Ms. Helen Haley, our business administrator and board secretary, will present the 2017-2018 budget proposal. Oh, thank you.
The presentation is also being shared with Mr. Sabrana and Mr. Boardley at their location. Okay. Okay. Good evening. My name is Helen Haley. I'm the business administrator, and I would like to present the fiscal year 2017-18 budget. I'm starting out with the process that we went through to date. We actually started the budget process back in October, but our first meeting with the Finance Committee was November 28th, 2016. We met again with them on January 31st to present a balanced budget, and then we met just this past Monday after receiving state aid to go over that there really weren't very many changes on March 6th. We also met with the board members that were not on the on the Finance Committee on February 2nd and February 7th. The majority of them, one was not able to attend. Like I said before, we started the process back in October, and through December, we met with all the departments and the principals to review their budgets and enter them into our internal software. As I also mentioned, January 31st, we met with the Finance Committee and presented a balanced budget. We were waiting for the state aid figures, anxiously awaiting them. The governor gave his address on February 28th, and the state aid numbers were released on March 2nd. And that leads us to the budget presentation today. In the future, next Wednesday, we'll be having a special meeting to vote on the budget. The special meeting actually has two topics. One is the naming of VHS North, and the other topic is voting on the fiscal year 2017-18 budget that will be submitted to the county for their review. The deadline to submit a budget to them is really through our the state DOE software. We just upload it to them, and that's March 20th. The county then reviews the budget line by line, and they have from March 20th through April 24th to review it. When they're usually during that process, they email us questions that they have, and we have to give justifications for various things. Once they approve it, we advertise it, and then we hold a public hearing. Tentatively, the public hearing date is May 1st at 6 p.m. at Wallace. After that, we have to vote on a final budget, and we have that scheduled for right before the regular meeting. We're actually changing the times of the meeting. We'll have a special meeting at 6 o'clock on May 3rd, with a work session to follow at 7. So the voting will be at 6. In preparing a budget, it has to be balanced. You start out with, you have two pieces to it. Your revenues minus your appropriations have to equal 0. So that becomes a balanced budget. The revenue side is comprised of state aid, the local tax levy, local non-tax revenue, which is really internal revenue that we generate, other aid that comes from the government for extraordinary aid for special ed that's over a certain dollar amount of tuition, and semi, which also relates to special ed aid. The other components are not necessarily revenue, but they go on the revenue side of the equation. And it's the use of fund balance and the use of capital reserve and maintenance reserve. Fund balance, if you remember when the auditor gave his presentation back, I believe it was in November, he talks about surplus, excess surplus from the prior year. So as of June 30th, 2016, we had surplus that must be applied to 2018. So that's the use of fund balance. And then also with the DOE software, it calculates how much of 2017 we have to put into next year's budget. This year, we're not putting any, at this point, we're not putting anything in capital reserve or maintenance reserve. In June, we may reconsider that. Here's a breakdown of all the revenue line items. In total, you can see the budget is $197,222,083. Oh, I just want to mention, I know people might be taking notes or watching this. We will post this on our website afterwards, so you can look at it there or download it at that point. All right, so overall, it went up $2.5 million. The state aid portion went up $11,300, which basically is flat aid, and that was in the school choice line. The local tax levy that we're proposing is a 4% increase. Now, I know a lot of times it's confusing what that means. The 4% is in our budget. If you look at our tax levy last year, it was $22.6 million. We're proposing $23.5 million, which is an increase. Oh, I see Mr. Sobrana went away. Okay. I just want to make sure he's still, okay. All right, that was an increase of $904,000, which is a 4% increase on that line item. That equates to a 3-cent tax increase to the taxpayer. The local non-tax revenue, those are internally generated items, which we'll go over later. I talked about extraordinary aid and semi. Special revenue, those are the grants that we receive for IDEA, No Child Left Behind, which is now ESSA, Perkins, that type of thing. We have to budget those at less than 100% because you're not sure if you'll get the full amount. Fund balance is what I just talked about. Last year we had about 8.74 in excess surplus. That has to be applied to 2018. 39,000 relates to what the calculation was for this year, which is very beneficial because it means we had $2.2 million that we could apply over what we had last year. And how that's generated is, as everybody that works here knows, we have a cutoff of purchase orders, and we do it at a certain point in time. And this year we cut it off January 20th. Last year, it was February 1st. In doing that, you're basically saying that hopefully everybody bought what they needed for this school year, because you're not really supposed to buy this year for something you're going to use next year. So we cut that off, and we do look at it on a case-by-case basis if something is needed. But you're capturing the unspent money at that point. Also, during the year, as you know, if someone leaves, we usually fill that position with a long-term sub, so you're saving money there too. So during the year, we're accumulating surplus to be used to a future year. So we try to be very conservative with that. And also, we did a special cleanup at the end of last year. Scott Musterell went through all of our purchase orders, and anything that was hanging out there that needed to be closed, he closed. So we have a little bit extra this year. That doesn't happen every year, but that's what helped to offset our budget for next year. All right, this slide is a visual of how much of our revenue relates to state aid. So you can see that 79.5% of our budget is funded by state aid. The next page shows the same thing, just in a different type of graph. So, like, our local tax levy is a much smaller portion than our state aid portion. There were a lot of articles early on about the governor and the fairness formula, which he had written about how he wanted the formula to be $6,599 per student. And if that formula was implemented, we would have lost $70 million in state aid. Our state aid is $136 million roughly, so $70 million of that would go away. We were very grateful that on February 28th, as part of his speech, he said that he is giving the legislators 100 days to come up with a funding formula, and he will consider any options that they bring forward. I know Governor Sweeney is going around visiting various locations talking about the SFRA formula, and that is the formula that's in place right now. That formula has not been funded at 100%, but also it's been held harmless, and we have benefited from that held harmless, whereas other districts have been shorted by that. So, as I said in my next point here, the current formula is SFRA, and Vineland receives adjustment aid as a hold harmless. That may go away depending on the new formula. I went to a meeting at Hamilton High School last Friday where Senator Sweeney was there, as well as two other senators, talking about the funding formula. And Hamilton is one of the districts that is receiving less aid because of the hold harmless. I felt compelled to get up and talk about Vineland and our situation. And what I said to him is that even though the SFRA formula would create less aid for us, we're unique in that we have 70% free and reduced students, so our economy, would be hurt if that formula was run. But also, we are expanding in the special ed area. Our special ed expenses go up every year. We have over $19 million in special ed costs in our school-based budgets, and the aid does not compare to that. Also, our transportation fees go up as we have to transport people. We are a rural district, and we have to cover a lot of territory. In addition, as we had talked about before, there's charter schools coming here, and last year, unexpectedly, we had to transport to 4 locations instead of 1. So these are all amounts that we have to eat. And I asked him, when you're looking at the formula, there's components of this formula, and 2 of them are special ed and transportation. So if they could consider our needs in that, we would appreciate that. He did seem receptive to it, and he was aware of our situation. It's not clear, if there's an article in the press on that, if anybody wants to read it. The new formula may or may not be phased in during fiscal 2018. Like I said, the governor gave 100 days for the formulas to be presented, but he has informed Senator Sweeney that their budget is not really passed until the 3rd week of June, so some of this could be implemented. Any kind of change, they say, will be phased in over 5 years. So we're not quite sure how it will work out, but we are involved. As you know, we hired Salmon Ventures to represent us in Trenton, and just today I emailed one of the representatives that I had met at the Hamilton meeting, just basically to say, don't forget about us. In the state calculation for the local fair share tax levy, Vineland is significantly the calculation that they have for us for local tax levy is significantly greater than what we have in our budget. Okay, this is a comparison of the proportion of taxes. So if you look in 1998, the school portion of the total property tax that would be on someone's bill was 31%. The city of Vineland was 22%, and the county was 35%. Over the years, the school portion has diminished, where we now receive, in 2015, our portion was 22%, whereas the county is now at 41%. If you look at it from a rate standpoint, we're looking at some of the same years here. Between 2015 and 16, the last 2 years, we increased taxes by 2% in our budget. Between 15 and 16, that was an increase of 1.5 cents. In 14-15, that was an increase of 2.2 cents. This budget is proposing an increase of 3 cents. If you look at the city of Vineland, last year, they raised it less than a penny, and the year before, 4.8 cents. Cumberland County raised the tax rate 7.7 cents last year compared to our 1.5 cents. And the year before, 6.5 cents compared to our 2.2 cents. The year before that, ours was 0. Okay, on to the appropriations side. Appropriations really are the expense side of the budget. And every year when we start out the budget, there's typical areas that increase, and that's why we always say we have a shortfall that we need to cover. And those areas are salaries, health benefits, charter school tuition, and VOTEC tuition. And there's other areas too, but those are our big ones. This is the appropriation side of the budget in the different categories. We have different funds that we account for each of these. The top fund on here is the charter school tuition. As you can see, in 2016-17, we budgeted $4.7 million, and as of the October 15th count, it came in right about there. It came in maybe $7,000 less. But in this year, we budgeted $5.2 million, which is an increase of $482,000. That's a 10% increase. If I look at the historical increases in charter school tuition, it runs about 9%. So we felt pretty safe in putting 10%. But the charter schools each year have to do their own projection that they send to the state, and the state sends it to us. If we took their projection for next year, it would be an increase of 39%. So they propose a very large increase in their enrollment, which if we use their numbers, we would have to budget an additional $1.389 million. We don't want to do that. We didn't do it last year either, because last year it was also inflated, in my opinion. So we feel comfortable with the 10% increase because it's been 9% the last 2 years. I also brought this to the attention of the county office when we had our mid-year review, and also when we got the state aid numbers, and they were understanding of it, and they agree that at this point they agree with what we're using as reasonable. But we always have to justify it. Okay, the next areas are our general fund, contributions to school-based budget. What that is we have a Fund 15 that has all the schools' accounts in them, and then it rolls up into the general fund. The net increase in all the schools' budgets come to $183,842. But that's some big pluses, some big minuses, so it nets to that. And I would say the big pluses would be healthcare and salaries, and the big minus was the closing of Landis. The capital outlay fund, that has an increase of $483,000, and we'll go over what that is later. Special revenue, like I said, that's an estimate that we always have to budget less than we got last year. Okay, the goal is to balance programmatic and financial sides. All right, when we started the budget, our approach was to eliminate the $5 million shortfall. And when we talk about shortfalls, it's not like we're overspending, it's just rolling the expense side forward, looking at what we have on the revenue side before we go in and project any kind of tax increase or any other revenue items. So we projected $5 million. Once David Hart and Scott Mustrell go around and meet with the principals and supervisors, the actual numbers get input into the software, our Systems 3000 software, and then we see what the budget comes out to on the appropriations side. Then we start I work on the revenue side, and we finally come to zero. Included in this is we had decided that we would finalize the planned repurposing of Landis Middle School for a more cost-effective use. If you remember, in the fiscal year 2017 budget, we removed one grade level from that school. So there's 2 grade levels there. If we took out 1 grade level this year, it would leave about 100 students in that building, which is not cost-effective to run a building with that small amount of students. So we decided that we would finalize the repurposing of it this year. We also met with the principals and supervisors to maintain a flat, non-salary budget. We always look at class size and staffing. We reduce positions through attrition, consolidation, and enrollment-based staffing equalization. We do our best for people not to lose a job. We try to fill the vacant positions. We cut positions and move people into the vacant positions or the long-term contracts. Also, we wanted to expand the Cunningham Academy to include the middle school population and save on out-of-district placements. We also considered hiring armed security guards and selling vacant lots in older buildings. Okay, now here's the budget highlights. Of the positions, we have a total of 30 positions that we're reducing. 25 and a half of them relate to the repurposing of Landis School. The positions are listed here. Now, currently in Landis, we have 58.35 positions. The small portion on the end is really like a part-time kind of person. So we have 58 positions there right now. 25.5 will be reduced, taken away, and the other people, I guess it's 30-some, will move into the existing middle schools with the children, because as the children move to other locations, the teachers have to go with them too. The other cuts are 4 security guards and a half a custodian in Almond Road. If you look up here, there was 2.5 at Landis, and the other half is here, so that's 3 custodians. But you'll see later in the presentation that we're converting some substitute custodians into full-time custodians. So there's 6 of those. So I guess indirectly you can say there's a net of 3 additional custodians. The total position reductions totals $2.2 million. This slide really is an informational slide. ECBA is our preschool grant that we get, and it funds the preschool other than the inclusion students. So by reducing, our enrollment's going down in preschool. So by reducing the students that we have here, we also have to reduce positions. So that doesn't impact our general fund budget. However, these are our employees, and we would like to move them into spots within the district. So there's 18 positions that are being cut out of the preschool, but like I said, our goal is to put them in open positions. There's also 10 insight aides located there that we just will not use. The new positions, there's 2.5 special ed aides and 1 special education teacher. As I mentioned before, 6 custodians that are substitutes will be converted to full-time employees. So the 3 that are being reduced in those other locations I would imagine would fill in this area. Non-salary reductions. The non-salary reductions are mostly by just looking at the expenses and seeing what equates to actual. So we had a reduction in insurance premiums. That's our property casualty liability. Workers' comp is going down. We're doing well with our claims, I would say, in that area, but also as payroll goes down, workers' comp premiums go down. So $100,000 was reduced there. And in utilities, this relates to our gas utility. And we just took a closer look at what the actual was. Usually we put a projected amount on at the beginning of the year for our purchase order, but it's been coming in less, so we cut some there. The transportation budget has a decrease, which relates to we do lease purchase of buses rather than paying for them all in 1 year. And by bringing in the co-op, that's brought in some revenue to us. Non-salary increases. As I mentioned earlier, the charter school tuition, we're budgeting a 10% increase. If the charter schools would have us use their numbers, it would be 39%. We're using 10% based on historical numbers. Vocational tuition, this is all the vocational schools, total of $473,550. And some of that has to do with, as the shared time students move on, we're replacing them with full-time students at CC Tech. The inclusion portion of preschool. The ECBA program, the funding covers students except for inclusion students. The general fund budget has to fund that portion. So as we report on our ASSA for special education and preschool, we have to include the preschool students that are special ed in our elementary numbers, and we get aid based on that. But the sad thing is, the aid is flat. So when you get flat state aid and you're getting increasing special ed students, you're losing money because you're paying for them out of your budget. So this $418,000 is basically aid that's getting moved over to preschool based on enrollment. Cunningham Academy, we're expanding that program, as I mentioned earlier, so that would be an additional $364,775. Textbooks relate to math. Phone system hosted, we're going to convert our phone system to one that's based on the cloud. and that's the net cost of doing that. Capital outlay, we have budgeted $483,000 over what was budgeted last year, and I'll go over the items that are included in that. Actually, I can say right now that as we're talking about Landis and converting it to office space, the capital improvements there, the renovations, we have budgeted at $450,000. We also have in the budget a line item for security armed guards, 15 at $25 an hour for $485,625. One additional one is budgeted in the preschool budget, so there's really 16. It's just that 15 come out of the general fund. The school-based budget part, that's just what I was saying. That's a net effect of our school, the school budgets into this account. Employee benefits overall, that's not the school portion, that's the general fund portion, that's like payroll taxes and Medicare and so forth. That's just the net effect of that. And outsourced substitutes, that's just an increase that we found in using the substitutes. We need to increase our budget to cover the usage of them. Okay, other highlights that are somewhat included in the numbers that I gave you, but I thought I would point out. The repurposing of Landis Middle School, the reduction of salaries and benefits is $1.753 million, and health insurance premiums are increasing an average of 7.7%. If you look at the Landis budget from fiscal year 2016, that's when it was fully at full capacity. I guess you'd call it 3 grades. That was $5.8 million. But this year, after 1 grade was removed, it was $4.6 million. So by reducing those 25.5 positions, it's a reduction of 1.753. So you see, you don't really save the whole 4.6 because some of the teachers and the supplies and so forth go with the students to their new location. Okay, on the revenue side and the fund balance side, again, the local tax levy is an increase of 4% in our budget, which equals 3 cents to the taxpayer, which brings in $904,000. The sale of school properties, we have on the agenda tonight to approve selling some two buildings and several lots. We are estimating that we will get a minimum, we hope, of $650,000 that we're putting in next year's budget. Transportation co-op revenue, that's money that we generate from routes that we do for the co-op. Rental income of office space, we're leasing out office space at the warehouse. I'm putting some of these little items on here, not little, but smaller than normal, just to show that we're trying to get creative with generating revenue. Bus advertising, we budgeted $5,000 here because you're supposed to budget half of the amount you expect to receive and put the other half as an offset to your gas cost. Our goal was to raise $10,000 a year. So far, in the year and a half we've been doing it, we have revenue of $30,875. So we've surpassed our goal. Homeless revenue. In the past, we got large amounts of homeless revenue, but we've been refining that process and scaling back the people that actually qualify as homeless. It doesn't bring in the revenue, but it's a good thing because really once a homeless student is here for a year, they become our responsibility, so we can't go after other districts or the state for that money. So even though it looks like a decrease here, it's a decrease in our projected revenue. It's a more realistic number. The 165 is just other revenues combined together. We talked about the fund balance increase, and last year the calculated amount in the software came to $129,000 that we had to take out of fiscal year 2016. This year it says we have to take $39,000. This is just a calculation that the state comes up with. So out of this year's budget, $39,000 we have to apply to next year. And like I said, last year we put money in capital reserve. We don't have that scheduled for this year. Our capital outlay budget, as I said, it went up $483,000. Here's a list of the capital projects that we have included in the budget. Most of the $483,000 relates to the $450,000 Landis renovations for central office. The other is some decreases plus a service truck and transportation for $38,000. I can read off the projects. The sectional roof replacements at 2 locations, VHS North and South. VHS locker room, flat roof replacement at Landis, VHS sectional parking lot repaving, bleacher replacement at VHS South. This year we're doing VHS North. New security doors at Johnstone and DePolito. We're in the process of really doing new doors at all the schools, and these are just 2 more of them. Cleaning equipment replacement, that's just to keep our equipment turnover going. Network infrastructure and multimedia equipment, those are the same amounts that we budgeted last year. It's just part of our, I would say it's part of our plan of what we do each year in the technology area. And in transportation, the new item is the service truck. The garage equipment is a standard thing that we put in each year. Buses, what we've been doing the last 2 years, and this will be the third year, is financing buses over 5 years. What we do is we go out to bid for the financing piece by itself. It's not coupled with the buses. We go out for a bid for financing, and we tell them that what it's going to be used for. And because we're a government entity, we get a lower rate. Whereas if you went right to a vehicle company, you might get a rate like you would get if you're buying a car. So last year we got under 2%. This year it's projected at 2.35%, and that's the interest rate each year over 5 years. So we budgeted that payment of $226,777. With that, we would be buying 5 54-passenger buses, 4 34-passenger wheelchair buses, 2 24-passenger wheelchair buses, and 3 7-passenger vans. Joe's plan is to move more into the special ed area when it comes to transportation. We found that it's more economical for us to transport the special ed children than to sub those runs out. So we save money by doing that. So that's why the focus is on purchasing more special ed vehicles than the 54-passenger buses. Okay, now onto the tax impact. I've said this in a few different ways, but again, here the increase is $904,376 for a tax rate increase of 3 cents. The average home is assessed at $159,372, but if you look at the tax ratables, they actually went down. So that hurts a little bit when it comes to the tax allocation. Proposed increase per average household with this 3 cent increase is $47.90. This is the same chart I showed earlier, but just so you can compare what we have proposed to the last 2 years. This budget proposes a 3 cent tax increase compared to last year, which is 1.5 cents, compared to the year before, which is 2.2 cents. That equates to $47.90 a year, or $3.99 a month. And I reiterated what the average assessment is and the tax rate per 100 assessed value. There's also a link for seniors. I put this on here last year too, and some seniors are eligible for a tax freeze. If you click on this link, it'll take you to the website that tells you what the requirements are to apply for something like that. But it's a PTR1 and PTR2 form. And special thanks to the people that I have listed here in helping to put this budget together. So that concludes my presentation. Jamie is going to, well, Jamie already gave it to the people here, and I think Gia is going to put it on the website for me. So it will be available for everybody to review. Now, would you like me to stay up here for questions, or do I sit down, or how would you like to do this?
I'd like to say something, Ms. Haley, first. A very thorough presentation. We've discussed this several times, but when you just displayed that with the PowerPoint, it was very thorough, and if anyone has questions, I'm sure you'll be able to answer them.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope so. Thanks. So sit down.
I think, anyone have any questions for Ms. Haley? Mr. Medio?
We're voting on this next week.
Yes. Wednesday.
Okay, when do board members get to put in their ideas on changing this budget?
I would say you could vocalize them now. You could meet with us. You could send us emails. I mean, if you have opinions, we'd like to hear them.
All right, another question. Is it true that the rule still stands that whatever we send in next week, we can only change each line item by 10%?
I don't know about the 10%. I would have to look into the 10%, but I know what the county expects is that they basically expect that we're pretty much all behind this budget when we submit it to them on the 20th, because they spend a lot of time reviewing it, and they really don't want to change drastically after that point. So the purpose of the public hearing in May 1st would be for the public to come out and voice their concerns, and then if the board decides to change based on some of the public's concerns at that point, then it could be changed. But as of March 20th, the board should basically be behind the budget, I would say. And really, the budget that we're submitting isn't necessarily, I gave you a lot of details as to what's in the budget and how we got there, but basically you're voting on a budget total, like the total amount of the budget, and the total fund amounts of the budget, and the tax increase. So the actual resolution that you vote on each time lists each of the funds and the total dollar amounts and the tax levy, and that's what you're voting on. So not necessarily the line items that are in there. So just because I say there's a certain item in here, you could later say, we don't want to do that item. Sometimes things don't always happen the way they're supposed to happen, and just doesn't work, things just don't pan out all the time. You still budget for that, you still have the total amount of your budget, but the line items don't always happen. Or sometimes you put bids out and the bids come in less, so then you can do something else.
Anyone else? I also like to thank you for taking your time out to go to that meeting.
Oh, thank you.
When was it?
It was
again?
last Friday, March 3rd.
And what time was it?
It was at 3:30, but it went on to like 5:30, I think.
5:30. Thank you, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay, Miss Haley's done, so we'll move on. Approval of the minutes? I need to read each.
So moved.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Approval of minutes, February 1st, 2017 work sessions, February 2nd, 2017 board retreat, and February 8th, 2017 regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any comments? Roll call.
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes, and abstain to February 2nd.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley? Mr. Jennings?
Yes. Report by board solicitor.
None for public session.
Okay. Public comment on agenda items. Agenda items only. Ms. Haley, we have any?
Sure. Okay. I'll do it alphabetically. Anthony Carter, and these are only on topics on the budget, and they are.
Okay.
I don't mean budget. I don't mean.
Items.
I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on the budget. Yeah. Agenda items.
All right. Good evening. My name is Donald Anthony Carter. I'm not accustomed to speaking at the board, but tonight I feel the circumstances warrant me to address some of my concerns regarding the repurposing of Landis Intermediate School. I stand here not only as a former student and resident of Vineland, but also as a substitute teacher within the district. Being in several of the schools on a daily basis makes it pretty easy to see issues that are not being properly dealt with. One thing that concerns me the most is the amount of students in a classroom, most of which only have one instructor. I substitute taught in several of the district's middle schools, elementary schools, and at the high school. For example, at Memorial School, they are to their capacity and using trailers. I have seen several classes at Wallace and even at Vineland High School that are crowded with 25-plus kids in them. The researchers generally agree that lower class sizes, at least in primary and middle schools, are linked to positive educational benefits, better test scores, fewer dropouts, and higher graduation rates, especially for disadvantaged children, such as those in Vineland. As far as the elevator proposal is concerned, my personal feelings are that as long as it doesn't violate the Americans with Disabilities Act, it should not be voted on. Landis has existed for almost 9 decades without an elevator. I do not see the urgency in getting one now, especially considering the proposed amount earmarked for the elevator is almost $87,000 above the bid being voted on. It baffles me how anyone can say that they support the interests of children and teachers and vote to close Landis as an educational facility. In my opinion, this is an enormous hindrance on the welfare of hundreds of students that will be directly and indirectly affected by these moves. I have a lot of respect for all elected officials, but it is crucial to remember when voting that if you are not voting within the student, staff, and taxpayers' interests, but rather your own personal interests, it would be doing a great injustice to the educational institution here in Vineland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Jeff Martine.
Good evening, members of the board and Mr. Frangipani. I've come here today all the way from Washington, D.C. to voice my concerns with the board's consideration of converting Landis Intermediate School into an office building. I echo the concerns of Mr. Sabrana and Mr. Medio in that the allocation of over $750,000 to renovate and repurpose an historic landmark, including the elevator, would be an unnecessary burden to the taxpayer and an unjustified impediment to the education of hundreds of students. I also can't fathom why we'd spend upward of $350,000 on an elevator that isn't mandated by law. I understand it's part of the district's long-term plan, but why does that have to happen now when it would require a 4% tax hike? I personally did not attend Landis Intermediate School, but as class president at Vineland High School, I had the honor of representing many of their alum, and I will say they are the best and brightest of our city. As a board, it is your responsibility to ensure the equal opportunity for the children of Vineland to learn in a safe environment. By closing Landis Intermediate School, classroom sizes will increase even more than they already have. In the past few weeks, I've spoken with teachers who have anywhere between 30 and 35 students in their classroom as it is. How does this serve to benefit our students? Many of you ran your campaigns with the promise of decreasing classroom sizes. With such large classes, issues of security and classroom management are inevitable. I understand the new middle school will alleviate many of these crowded classrooms, but not for another 2 years. I must also ask, what is motivating this move? We have a district with crowded classrooms, a decreasing graduation rate, a declining preschool enrollment, amongst other things. Is this really the best use of taxpayer money? Last year's board voted against a 4% increase that would have saved the trouble of moving teachers to different schools. Why then is a 4% tax increase being considered for the non-essential elevator and central administration move to Landis? I can get behind such a tax hike when it benefits our teachers, students, and taxpayers, but this move doesn't benefit them at all. On the contrary, it does them a disservice by displacing teacher and students alike. If this move and subsequent tax hike doesn't help students, teachers, or taxpayers, who does it serve? Landis Intermediate School is a well-functioning school that should be kept open for the sake of the students' education, to alleviate an unnecessary burden to the taxpayer, and to protect an historic landmark from being gutted. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Martine.
Vicki Miller.
Good evening. Vicki Miller, Vineland, New Jersey. I was at the last board meeting and read the Daily Journal article with the closing of Landis. I was shocked by the amount of people on numerous social media pages that are devastated with the closing of Landis School and the possibility of moving the district administration office to the location at a cost estimated at almost $500,000. You know just as well as I that these projects always far exceed the budget. Look at the walkway at Vineland High School. I have told many people that have commented on social media to address their concerns with the board meeting, but they all feel that what they have to say falls on deaf ears and refuse to be involved with the school board. I am not afraid to speak up, and I understand their concerns. I agree with Mr. Sabrana and Mr. Media that this school is historic and a huge part of Vineland and should be preserved. Personally, I do not have any ties to Landis School, as I went to Sacred Heart. But I know what it feels like to have your school close its doors and be used for something other than its original purpose. This closure was made through the diocese, but we as taxpayers have the power to keep Landis doors open another year. There is also talk about Barcy and Luchter schools closing, Johnstone being used as Amos Academy for Vineland High School. I work at Wallace, and we are busting at the seams, as it is with taking an entire grade of students from Landis this past year. There are teachers that do not have permanent classrooms and are forced to hop from room to room every period. Due to this, classes are filled with 25-plus kids, and some are reported 31 kids in them. And this is a regular-sized classroom. Last Thursday, Mr. Fiocchi and Mr. Jennings came to Wallace and saw for themselves how crowded the school is. I want to give our children full attention. It is not fair that with large amounts of children in a class, that we cannot provide them with proper attention needed. I would like to state, for the record, that Dr. Davis and Mr. Bermudez are doing an excellent job considering the circumstances, but I believe the board has the ability to do more for our students and our teachers. I see an issue with the busing as well. A lot of students that attend Landis walk. I don't have the exact numbers, but adding additional routes to accommodate these students will probably not be cheap. Lastly, I'm curious, what will happen with Reber School? An undisclosed amount of money that has been spent on this building, and there is talk that it will be sold very cheap or even given to the city to be knocked down and made into a parking lot. This alarms me, and I really hope the board takes in concerns of a large majority of the public in consideration when voting on this.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
R. Allan Moon.
It's Allan Moon here again, on the other side of the dais. I object to the proposal to close Landis School. And of course, what goes along with that is the proposal to install an elevator. You've already heard some of the reasons, but I'll just summarize. First of all, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's good for students. I don't think it will improve instruction. It potentially threatens the historic status of the Landis School, and it costs too much. Let me just review a little bit about the historical status of Landis School. Landis School is listed upon both the National and the New Jersey Registers of Historic Places. That's a very special distinction. There's only one other building in Vineland that enjoys that distinction, and that's Landis Theater. I was quite taken aback when I read in the paper last week, I guess, that only the exterior, according to our district experts, is significant. Well, I got news for you. Historic buildings are like people. What's on the inside is often more significant than what shows on the outside. Now, I happened to give the Historic Preservation Office a call last week, and when I mentioned that quote to the reviewer who handles this sort of review, her exact words were, "Oh my word." So the question is, why do we have that opinion? The building is important as an organic whole. The interior is just as important as the exterior. And any claim to the contrary is really quite silly. There's also a very serious situation in that because of the register listing, the district is required by law to submit plans for any changes, including just the closing of that school, to the State Historic Preservation Office for review and approval. In case you're wondering, the law is New Jersey Historic Register Act, New Jersey Historic Register Act, NJAC 7:4. Okay? So you got the reference. Now, any submission from the district for consideration of changes to the school, to the register listed school, wouldn't necessarily include many things: maps, photographs, plans, specifications, proposed agreements, lists of affected property owners, which, as someone pointed out to me, is everybody in the city if this change leads to a tax increase. Historical societies, historical commissions, other interested parties, affected government agencies. And since the proposed installation of an elevator necessarily will involve some degree of demolition, a structural assessment by a professional engineer is also required. As of this morning, the Historic Preservation Office had received no information about this project other than what I provided to them. None. And I'd like to know why. Where's the due diligence? What would happen or would have happened had the public not raised a fuss about this? Just swept under the carpet or what? Now, we don't know what the Historic Preservation Office will do. We don't know whether they will approve the plan or recommend substantial changes. They could do either. I suspect that some change would be required. Certainly, any changes, including the changes necessary to a work order to provide the documents that are required for the review, are going to come at a cost, and very likely at a substantial cost. So I would ask you to consider this very seriously, and do not approve a project until you know what you're really getting into. We don't have the full dimensions that define this problem. You can't solve problems if you don't understand them. And last but certainly not least, we don't need another tax increase. There are lots of people on fixed budgets, and 3 cents here, 3 cents there. Pretty soon you're talking real money. And I don't care whether the county charges 3 times as much as their rate as the school district. I'm concerned with saving every penny that we can. We don't need to spend the money on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mugay.
There was another person that wanted a yellow form. Thank you.
My name is Celeste Maloney. I worked for 35 years in this system. I know every brick and mortar. We started at 106 Landis Avenue, and then we also had rented another building that was right across that is now the motor vehicle building. We have rented. I think it's about time the education wakes up and smells the roses. Number one, we were the 100th year graduation class out of Vineland High School. And I'm very disturbed to think that you would take, I don't know what you would call it, to me it's audacity, to the historical value of that building alone, and it's on historical value. And the building is well built. Why ruin it? We have got properties that this school system owns right now. We are in this building, we are in Coney, and we're on the boulevard. That we all purchased this property that has been paid for. So I would like to know as a taxpayer, but more than anything, I'm a high school graduate of Vineland High School, very proud of Vineland. And I don't like the abuse of just throwing things around or throwing the students around. To me, when I came to Vineland itself, there was grade schools. Junior high schools was 7th and 8th, not 6th, 7th, and 8th. It was 7th and 8th. And now they're downsizing and they're turning the schools into 6, 7, and 8. And then, oh no, wait a minute, it was 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then they turned around and done it down to 6, 7, and 8. So I think it's about time that people clear their ears and clear their noses or whatever and realize that this is money. Oh, and by the way, I believe it was $470,000 or $430,000. That's a pittance because you really don't know after you step into that mud how deep it can go. That's only what they're telling you now. But then all of a sudden they'll find a crack over here and they'll find a crack over there and this has got to be done and that's got to be done. I'm sorry, it's a waste of taxpayers' money. I value where I graduated from. I've lived in Vineland most of my life. I grew up here, and I know an awful lot of people will be very much disturbed as me. And I think it's about time that we're supposed to be educators. The system, number one. And number two, I don't understand these charter schools. I thought we only had one. I didn't know we had 5, to my knowledge. I just learned that tonight. I understand from your presentation. I'm not sure. And they're building a new one, by the way, for a charter school. Who's paying for that? Is it the taxpayers of Vineland? I don't understand what is going on. I mean, and then we've got another one that's called Lincoln Avenue. They're going to be a brand new school. I don't know what it's considered, a grade school, I gather. They've closed up Oak and Main. They've closed up by Butler and sold it or whatever. I know it's been, at least the nurses have been over there from City Hall. There's so much turmoil. It's about time you get on the right page and be honest with the taxpayers of Vineland. People want to know. And if you're closing any other schools, and the size of a class makes a hell of a lot of difference when it comes to education. Everybody isn't on the same page. And if you got a teacher that's got 35 and 40 kids, and also you need parents that are involved in education, which you don't have too much of today. I mean, when I went to school, our parents were involved. I was involved with my daughter. She graduated from Vineland. But my point to you is, it's about time that parents also have to be pulled in and have responsibility, not just the teacher. And I'm just upset to the point that I cannot see the investment or the destruction that they want to make a business administration office out of what I call the old VHS. That's where I graduated with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Public comment on agenda items?
Good evening. My name is Michael Brosh, resident of Vineland, taxpayer, currently a Board of Education teacher. Current assignment is Landis Middle School. I come here tonight before you to offer some concerns and comments, and unbiased, because whether you vote yes or no tonight, I'm still going to be an employee of the district. So with that in mind, my current concern is I have a middle school student at Rossi. I have a elementary school student at Menny's. My concern is taking 100 students out of Landis School, or 105, whatever the number is, and transferring them to 3 other schools. You're going to add about 4 kids in each classroom. Currently echoing the sentiments of some of the other speakers here. That's going to create an overcrowded environment. And again, the amount of instruction, keeping kids on task at that level, it's hard for a teacher, and I could tell you firsthand, it's very hard to keep kids on task. The lower the numbers, the better you can teach and convey information. So that's my first concern, the overcrowdedness of a school. Second concern is I understand that this building is very valuable to the police station. I get that. I know that it would be a valuable asset to them for either improving their system, expanding their building, and helping their operations run more smoothly. And I think that's great for our community, keeping us safe. Because if you have a good police department, then you're secure, and I get that. I don't think that repurposing Landis is a good idea, though. I do believe that you have a building at 1350 West Boulevard, I believe says central administration. I think that is a better move for the board. There's an elevator in there already, I believe. So that helps the elevator status. Me personally, we have a home at Landis. We have teachers there. They call their home. And I feel that if you take away Landis from our teachers, it's like chopping down a tree with a nest, and you're ruining the family. So that's my thoughts and concerns. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Brosh. Is there anyone else for comments on agenda items from the public? Okay, seeing none, we will continue on. Motions and resolutions. Recommendations for approval by the board superintendent. Mr. Frangipani.
Under Personnel, 1.1 and 1.2.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments, anyone? Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Cottasparty?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Under Procedures and Operations, 2.1 and 2.2.
Motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Oh, yeah. Any questions, comments? Roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Under Buildings and Grounds, 3.1 to 3.5.
I ask that they be voted on separately.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. 3.1, should I read it?
Go ahead, yeah, read it.
Approval of the resolution declaring Landis Middle School is no longer needed for the educational purposes and authorizing and directing the superintendent to apply to the New Jersey Department of Education for permission to close Landis Middle School as an instructional facility.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
And any discussion? Mr. Medio?
Yes. I don't want to belabor the point. I've said it before, and the people who spoke quite eloquently to the point. A couple of things I will say. If you vote yes on this, after hearing that you're going to put 30, 34, 35 students in a classroom, I really don't want to hear any more about how we're here for the kids and we're doing this for the kids and we're all about the kids, because this is a move that absolutely does not have to be made at this time. Regardless of what side you're on, it doesn't make any difference. The school never should have lost their 6th grade class last year. Next year, when your building opens, if it opens in September, you can make those moves accordingly. What are you going to do if it doesn't open in September? Wouldn't be the first project that was behind. So now you're going to have 2 years of these ridiculous numbers in these classrooms. And the reason I say ridiculous is because there's no reason to have them. No reason whatsoever. There's no reason to make this move now. There's no reason to put in an elevator now. There's no reason for any of this that I can see. Ms. Maloney said it quite right when she said, you have the building over on the boulevard. That's what we bought that for. That was part of the reason we bought it. The other part was because you had a $250,000 a year lease you were paying at Oak and Delsey for warehouse space. And by buying this for about $1.5 million, you eliminated that lease. It paid for itself in, 5 years, 6 years. And it also gave you this office space. Now, another one of the, I don't know, I still try to be a little correct, but sooner or later I'm not going to be. This idea that in the year 2017, it's somehow important for everybody to be under the same roof. You've gotten along 20 years without everybody under the same roof as far as administrators go. And with technology today, I'm not too sure you can't conduct a business without ever seeing each other. I mean, Mr. Fry certainly is going to agree with that, because everything he talks about is technology, technology. And even if you do have 2 or 3 people who have to travel, I don't see where it does you any good to spend $1 million renovating that building. And it's going to be $1 million. It's going to be more probably. So that just doesn't work for me. So like I said, I've had my say, and I'll get my vote.
Thank you, Mr. Medio. Anyone else? Discussion?
Mr. Jennings,
Mr. Sabrana?
I've been opposed to converting Landis School to district offices. Landis School is a National Historic Register building, and it should remain a school where history has and should continue to come alive for students. First and foremost, this proposal does nothing to enhance teaching and learning for our children. The installation of an elevator and the cost of renovation amount to nearly $800,000. The result would be a 4% increase in the school tax rate, with not 1 cent going to help improve students' learning and achievement. All because, as someone said, it would be a good idea to bring all our district office staff under one roof. Excuse me. As for the renovation costs, we all know how those can escalate, not including the discovery of asbestos or other now banned materials that were common in buildings constructed in that era. Just imagine the other more productive uses of that money. Here's one. I did a little research and I discovered an extensive narrative that reviewed 65 journal articles and 31 doctoral dissertations published from January 2001 to May of 2015. The narrative examined the effect of one-to-one programs on teaching and learning in K-12 schools. The research proved conclusively that the use of one-on-one devices such as laptops, iPads, Chromebooks, netbooks, etc., have had a positive impact on student academic achievement, especially in English, writing, mathematics, and science. We have approximately 5,000 Chromebooks in the hands of students now. These are low-cost but useful devices. Now that's a great start. So suppose we took that $800,000 and spent it on top-of-the-line Chrome laptops. More than 3,000 more students would have access to technology that 14 years of research has proved unequivocally would significantly improve their chances of success. And that's just one example. If we insist on raising taxes and spending more money, we can restore many of the programs that we've cut in the past, especially enrichment programs. We can hire some basic school teachers and other staff, pay for more field trips, perhaps a summer AMSA program, and attend to other more pressing infrastructure needs. Therefore, my vote is going to be an emphatic no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sobrana. Ms. Acosta, you had something?
Do we, Ms. Haley, I don't know if we can ask, but do you know or do you have any projections of what cost savings there would be with respect to moving transportation and registration over to one location with central administration?
I don't necessarily have cost savings on moving them, but if everyone moved into Landis, then Coney would be empty, and I would assume that we would sell that building.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any questions or more comments?
I'm going to make my comment when I vote, if that's okay.
The other question, Mr. Jennings, I guess this would be for Mr. Weaver. Assuming that if Landis were to stay as a school, what, if any, based on your experience, what, if any, improvements, long-term capital expenditure would the district have to just maintain it for the use of a school?
Well, the school is, as we know, built in 1927. We were scheduled for a $14 million total gut rehab of that building through the long-range facility plan. When the state ended up short on funds, that ended up getting cut. So the building obviously does need mechanical upgrades as we go along. We put some money into the budget for the flat roofs replacement. I talked about the windows were replaced, the HVAC, the mechanicals were replaced. Beyond that, we did have a new slate roof put on through the SDA. That was $1 million project. Beyond that, the building's in really good shape, actually. We just do our standard O&M and capital improvements on the building, what we're budgeting for this year.
And is it my understanding that obviously there would need to be a board vote before any proposal would go to the Historic Society, or how does that work?
As far as the submission, we have done submissions in the past to the Historic Preservation in Trenton. When we did the slate roof, that was done. And when we did the interior work, that was also done. We replaced the entire flooring system. We refurbished the lockers. So we did do our submissions. I don't believe that submission requires board action.
Okay. I have one question. Mr. Fry, could you clarify the class size? Would it be 35 in a class? Could
No.
it be 35 in a class?
No. It would not be. I just started running that data, and I can share that data with you at a future time.
Okay.
Okay.
One thing that I had added in my presentation was that there's 58 58 full-time equivalents there right now, and 25 and a half were cut. So it's about, I think, 33 that would be moving with the students.
May I just respond to Ms. Acosta's question? If and when the board votes for permission to close the school, et cetera, then part of the process afterwards is the application.
Okay.
So if you approve the closing, then administration and Mr. Marighi then know the steps that need to be taken. It wouldn't need a separate vote.
Anyone else? We have a motion.
Point
We
of
have a
order
s-
on that.
Hold on.
Can we be certain, or can somebody make sure that the law says you're supposed to do all this before you act on it and not after you act on it? The New Jersey Historical Commission
I will check
submissions.
that out, Mr. Medio.
Thank you.
Later in the afternoon, I received an email from Larry Marighi that I shared with the board. I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it or not, because it was later in the afternoon. I wanted some clarification because he had given us a letter from, is it okay that I'm talking about this? Okay. From Holly Manders yesterday, I think it was the 6th. And she was talking, what she had put in her letter is that project authorization through the New Jersey Historic Preservation Office must be secured prior to commencement of selective demolition. The application for project authorization must be submitted by any government agency whose project or undertaking may encroach upon a New Jersey register listed property. The construction of an elevator, and this is just about the elevator, of an elevator within the building requires New Jersey Register authorization as it would involve alteration and demolition of a portion of the building interior. So like the one item that we're talking about right now is to change it from educational purposes to other, so really to take it offline for educational. But along with, that's what he has to send to the state for approval there. But when it comes to the elevator piece of it, I had asked him, did you already submit the application? And he said, no. And I said, why? And so he wrote and he said, it is our professional opinion that this project will easily receive New Jersey Historic Preservation Office approval based on our past experience with the Preservation Office on other projects, including the Landis School and where we propose locating the elevator. As stated previously, it would be harder to justify this project if the elevator was proposed as an addition on the exterior of the building. The Preservation Office understands that buildings need to be upgraded, especially for ADA compliance, if they are to remain viable. We thought it would be acceptable to receive bids so the actual costs would be established and the project approved by the board prior to making the application. We are confident approvals can be in hand before the start of construction in July 2017. So there's different approval processes. This one we're voting on right now is just the one that goes to the state for changing it from an educational facility to not.
Yeah, but what Mr. Medio's question really is about is this. When we go to sell property, as we have here tonight, we needed the approval of the Department of Education before we can approve the sale. What the question is on the table tonight is whether or not we need the pre-approval from the Historic Commission before we can take action to take the school offline. Okay. So that's what we need to find out, and that's what we will we'll check on.
Okay, that I do not.
Yeah, whether or not there's a prerequisite to it.
Can I make one comment on that? There's an old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Just remember something. Is it next month that we're going to vote to buy that Almond Road School for $1? Anybody remember that? Well, that's what I just heard. I'm sure that we're going to get the approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Comments are finished, yes? And roll call, Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
I'm going to give a comment as I give my vote. It seems no matter how I or someone else may vote on any issue, someone likes it, another doesn't understand it, and someone else will be upset. Should I choose to vote one way, I'm supposedly micromanaging. If I vote another, I'm rubber stamping. How I personally come to a decision is by looking independently into whatever's being proposed. I'm not micromanaging, nor am I rubber stamping with a vote of yes or no. What I'm doing, after careful research, is voting for what I feel is best for not only our students, but the whole district. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and more seem to keep popping up as to keeping Landis a school or turning it into an administrative building. Would it be great having everyone housed in the same building? Sure it would. But I'm concerned as to the financial aspect of the renovations, the keeping of it as a historical classification, and the overcrowding of rooms. No matter what is decided tonight, I want what is best for the district and the students, and will be behind it, as I always am. I'm very conflicted and wish I had some more information on some of these issues that just seem to be popping up, for being a possible declassification or staying as a school. So therefore, I'm voting no.
Mr. Fiocchi?
I understand everybody's concerns about closing the school. The main goal here is that we're moving the district forward while consolidating buildings. The city wants this building. Coney will be sold. And currently Landis is not being used to its full capacity. I visited there yesterday, and probably 70% of the school was empty. It's going to be much better used, I think, as an administration building, and much better preservation of history as well compared to an education facility. That being said, my vote is yes.
Mr. Medio?
I can't let that go. The reason it's 70% empty is because you took the students out of it. It's not because the students, there's not room for them. It's not because there's not a need for it. The people at Wallace, Rossi, and Memorial tell you they're bursting at the seams. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but regardless of that, it's not being utilized to its full capacity because the administration took the students out. There was no question of that last year or the year before. My vote's no.
Mr. Pagano?
I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Fiocchi on his comments. This is not something that's new. It's something that has been discussed last year with the prior administration, and a lot of these questions have come up and been answered. I don't know why more information is not being put out as to the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. We're only hearing negative parts, but not positive parts. That being said, I'm going to say yes.
Ms. Rios?
No.
Mr. Sobrana? Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Well, as it's been said, we've discussed this for many years, getting everyone together under one roof. Yes, the schools have a few extra students than they normally have, but they're still not at their limit. Now, I'm not saying this is ideal, but in order for us to move forward, sometimes, we have to work a little harder, and I think that's what we're doing here. And I think this is going to be best for our district in the long run, and I would say within a year or two, we'll be back in shape once the middle school is built and finished. I think, we have to go through some vibrations to get where we need to be. So I'm voting yes.
Motion carries 5-4.
3.2, approval of the resolution authorizing the solicitation of bids at public auction for the public to purchase certain properties vacant lots not needed for school purposes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Conversation? Discussion? Questions? Seeing none?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
3.3, approval of the resolution authorizing solicitation of bids at public auction for the public to purchase certain properties, buildings, and lands not needed for school purposes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Questions, comments? Anyone? Seeing none?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
This is 3.3, right?
Yes.
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 Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
3.4, approval of the following New Jersey Department of Education other projects for schematic and final approval with no state funding requested. Project Landis School Central Administration, Vineland High School South locker room upgrades, E.R. Johnstone Secure Entrance, DePalato Secure Entrance, Salvatore Delagos School Secure Entrance, Vineland High School North, 2017 partial roof replacement, Vineland High School South, 2017 partial roof replacement, Landis School, 2017 partial roof replacement, Vineland High School South parking lot resurfacing.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Questions, comments? Mr. Medio?
Yeah, going along with my vote on 3.1, I'll be voting no on the Landis School Central Administration part of this.
Mr. DeSanto, can we pull one? We can pull one piece out of that?
He's not pulling one, just as you do with personnel.
Okay.
1A, 1B. You know, if you're voting on 1A, you can vote on all of 1A except for one item. So, yeah, it could be done.
Just want to make sure it was listed properly. Any more questions or comments? Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
No as to Landis School Central Administration, yes as to everything else.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
No to the Landis School Central Administration, yes to the rest.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
No to Landis School Central Administration, no to Landis School 2017 partial roof replacement, yes to everything else.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes to everything except the Landis School Central Administration, no to that.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
3.5,
Oh, sorry. Motion carries 5-4.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. 3.5, approval of the resolution dedicating the Vineland High School varsity soccer field in honor of Richard Kimmek.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Anyone?
I'd like to say I'm just happy this is finally coming forward. I know we put it out there last year. It was sent to the board, and last year's board decided to push it off to this year because we got it late, and I'm just really happy to see this come to fruition for Mr. Klemick, Coach Klemick, and for the soccer teams.
I'd like to thank Ms. Codispoti for proposing this and bringing it back to the board so we could get it done.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'm going to echo Codispotti's comments about Mr. Klemick, a high school and college classmate, a fraternity brother, a tremendous coach, and just an all-around great guy, and well-deserved of this honor.
Thank you, Mr. Sabrana. Anyone else? Seeing none?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Codispoti?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes, he was one of my former teachers, so congratulations on him.
You pass.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
but I made it.
Under Finance, 4.1 to 4.9.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Give my question at vote time.
Can we have questions, comments?
questions?
None?
Oh, yeah.
Chris.
Just one statement on that.
Go ahead, Eugene.
Just as before, I'll be voting no on the elevator bid. Besides thinking it shouldn't be in there, one of my former classmates was a valedictorian. When he saw that number, said, "Where are you putting an elevator, in the Empire State Building?" I think that price is ludicrous.
Anyone else?
Mr. DeSanto? Yes. Did you want to give an update on 4.6? That's the suburban consulting engineers. Should we withdraw that one?
Yes. The latest on that was the proposal that came from SCE was, in my view, very objectionable. There were provisions that were not included. I submitted a 5-page summary, review summary to Mrs. Haley. She sent it on. We received a letter late this afternoon indicating that they did not accept my changes, and they are insisting upon their original proposal terms and conditions as written. So there was no response other than we want our original proposal. I do not believe the original proposal is in the best interest of the district. It's my responsibility to make sure that we are protected. It did not contain insurance provisions. It did not contain proper indemnification. I can go on, but as worded, I advise against accepting that proposal. Gene has a question.
Mr. Medio, sorry.
Yes, could we do what we've done in the past several times and approve this with the stipulation that it's made acceptable to the solicitor?
I think that's what,
Are we withdrawing it?
No, what it would be is, you see the way that it's written now on your agenda? So 4.6 at the end would be subject to a form of agreement acceptable to the superintendent and board solicitor. And that will give me the opportunity, if they're willing to talk, so far they aren't, but I'll be open to discussion. If they're willing to talk, we can see, and then we can bring this back in April.
Mr. DeSanto?
Yes. John?
Research, is this a standard type contract for this kind of work, and could we take a look at one and see how far in variance it is from what's typical for that particular industry?
Well, the standard contract, John, believe it or not, comes from the American Institute of Architects. It comes from the National Engineers Group. So those contracts are standard, but they are prepared and favor the professionals. When you represent an owner, as we are, we look for protections, and protections include insurance, indemnification, et cetera. So to answer your question, yes, there are standard contracts, but they're pro-industry as opposed to pro-owner.
Well, I'm comfortable with approving it with the stipulation that the form, whatever the final form is, that meets your approval.
I can assure the board that it isn't my intention to see to it this contract doesn't get approved. It's my intention to make sure that the provisions are for the protection of the district. Now, if certain things can be worked out, I don't have a problem with language modification, but the concept has to be there, you know, so that's all I can say.
thank you, Gene. Thank you, Mr. DeSanto. Any more questions or comments? Mr. Frangipani?
Wait a second. Can Mrs. Haley read that in? That-
Can you give me the exact wording? Because I mean, I was writing all the
Yes.
things at the time.
At the end, comma, subject to a form of agreement acceptable to the superintendent and board solicitor. So 4.6 is amended accordingly, and then when you vote, it has that provision.
Also wanted to add, I was just discussing with Helen, under 4.9B, the Landis Intermediate School elevator bid, subject to the approval, contingent on the receipt of approval from the New Jersey Historic Preservation Office before any work could be done.
That's what Larry, when I
That's what
emailed
Larry
Larry,
had
he said-
recommended.
Yeah, well, okay,
That's okay with the board?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's your recommendation, so it has to be okay with you, then the board will
It's
vote.
fine with me. I think it's wise that, that we get their approval before anything happens.
Everybody understand that?
Okay. Get to vote.
Roll call, Ms. Haley, if you're ready.
Sure. Ms. Acosta?
Yes, as amended.
Ms. Codispoti?
$336,000 is a lot of money. I understand that we could use an elevator at Landis, but I also know that using that money, as an example, to increase the size of our dance academy by knocking out a room and spreading it out, would help by adding to our curriculum and maintaining our students in the district, or maybe an all-purpose room for the arts wing or a possible expansion of the arts wing. These students continue to excel both artistically and academically with little space. I'm sure if you ask principals or teachers, there's something in their school that could be updated or added to help them. At this time, I'm just not convinced, especially with the possibility of the state changing the formula to give us money, that spending $336,600 on an elevator is appropriate right now. Therefore, I'll be voting no to 4.9B, yes to the rest as amended.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
No on 4.9B, yes to the rest.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
I'm going to vote no to 4.6, and whenever the board solicitor, superintendent, and whoever else is involved gathers together and comes to an agreement and brings it back to us, then I might change my mind, but I'm going to vote no for that. Currently, and 4.9B, I'm voting no. Everything else is yes.
Mr. Sobrana?
Oh, yes on everything except 4.9, big no on that.
Mr. Bordley?
Mr. Bordley?
Mr. Bordley?
Wake up.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, okay. Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-4. I'm sorry, motion carries. Item 4.9B is 5-4.
The other one is 8-1.
Correct, that is correct. 4.6 is 8-1, and everything else is 9-0.
Okay, now we're on to the regular agenda, which there's none. I have an item for discussion or review for adoption by board members. Approval of the resolution appointing and setting additional daily compensation for Mr. Frangipani in the absence of Dr. Gruccio. And did everybody read the resolution? Should I read it?
You read the title.
Okay. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Mr.
What's the time frame on this?
It's through April 30th or upon return to active employment, whichever occurs first.
I thought we were told it was 4 weeks. I thought it should be till about April 5th.
Well, it says it's 4 weeks or more, okay? And the resolution reads through April 30th or at a time where the superintendent can reconvene, whichever occurs first.
I wanted to remind the board that my opinion last week stands in terms of advising you that if 4 of you are conflicted from appointing a superintendent or evaluating a superintendent, you're likewise conflicted from appointing a acting superintendent. So in my view, Mr. Fiocchi, Ms. Acosta, Mrs. Cataspati, and Mr. Medio would be conflicted, so the remaining 5 of you are eligible to vote.
You said there's three? Okay. Acosta, Cataspati, Fiocchi, and Mr. Medio, okay.
What about the absolute majority rule? That doesn't apply anymore either.
What happened, you're talking about the,
5 people for any personnel matter have to approve.
go ahead and have your discussion. I'll
I'm
respond.
not trying to put you on the spot.
No,
I
Gene,
just,
I
I
understand.
know we had that. Did they change that since they eliminate half the board from voting?
I think it was when 5 of them were conflicted, when there was only 4.
There's only 4 conflicted.
Mr. DeSanto, was that when 5 were conflicted and 4 were not conflicted?
No, what I thought he was talking about is the doctrine of necessity, but that doesn't apply because you don't have 5 conflicted, you know,
Four.
you only have 4, so the doctrine of
5 that can
necessity
vote.
doesn't apply.
Right?
We have a quorum.
You have a quorum to vote.
Yes.
Now, what I recall about Gene's question is that may apply to the hiring of personnel, not necessarily the appointment of an of an employee who's already here. So even if
Just
that,
wondering.
yeah, even if that applies, it wouldn't apply to this particular vote. But I will check that for future reference. Yeah.
Do we have a motion and a second?
We do.
And we're done? Okay, Ms. Haley?
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Review of bills during January 2017?
So moved.
Second. Questions or comments? Ms. Haley?
Ms. Acosta?
Yes.
Ms. Cataspati?
Yes.
Mr. Fiocchi?
Yes.
Mr. Medio?
Yes.
Mr. Pagano?
Yes.
Ms. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Sabrana?
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear this.
Oh, it was for the bills. Mr. Sabrana?
Yes.
Mr. Boardley?
Abstain.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes. Is there any emergent items? I don't know of any emergent items. Okay. Anyone from the public that would like to address the board on any item? Anyone? No? Thank you. I have no reports or remarks.
Mr. Jennings?
Do I have a remark?
Yeah, you do.
What's that?
Oh.
You have to appoint the committee that is going to hear the residency that the board approved earlier tonight. You have to appoint that committee.
I should have wrote a note there.
Two.
The committee right now is Kim, if she would accept the chair of the ad hoc, and Mr. Fiocchi and myself,
Like that kind of
for
stuff.
residency hearings.
Okay.
And when we
Yes.
get dates together, we'll get together. And if anyone wants to move in and out of those residency hearings as we go, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I did volunteer for that committee. I said based on
Oh.
availability, so.
Right. Okay, I'll keep you in there, John. I'll put you on it. He's the 4th. He's number 4. Thanks, John. I forgot.
No problem.
Board member remarks. Mr. Pagano.
None at this time.
Mr. Fiocchi.
None.
Ms. Acosta.
The only thing that I want to say with respect to my vote on Landis is that I know it's very difficult, and I certainly don't like hearing, the reality is that, of course, as we move students out of Landis Middle School, they're going to be going into other middle schools. This is a temporary situation until we have our new middle school open and going. I think my vote is really swayed with looking at the long term. Essentially, right now, if you take a look at the numbers, to have this school at full capacity, it was $5.8 million. This year, that amount was reduced to $4.6 million. And with moving all of the teachers and other staff members and administrative staff into other areas, we're still keeping the same teachers, the same individuals that will continue to teach our students, and we're going to be saving $1,753,332. To me, that is extremely important because of the fact that there is so much uncertainty with respect to the school funding formula. I mean, it's not an issue of, this year there was no change in the school funding formula and we received flat funding. Based on the conversation that I had with Ms. Haley and everything that I have read with respect to our legislators' positions on the school funding formula, there is going to be a change and we will be affected, and we need to be ready for that change. So taking all of that into account, I don't want to find myself in a situation where, if there is a change that detrimentally impacts our district, that we're going to be looking at millions and millions and millions of dollars, and we're not going to have a plan. So, Ms. Haley, I know this has been very difficult, and I am sure that, the Historical Preservation Society will let us know what we can and cannot do, because I also want to keep, I think it's an important building. I am happy that the community will be able to use, the auditorium, and, central administration, we're going to have everybody together, but we're going to be realizing savings that hopefully will help us when that time comes. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kim.
First, I'd like to wish Dr. Gruccio and Mr. Boardley speedy recoveries and hope to see them back both very soon. I'd like to thank Mrs. Johnson and congratulate her students who participated in the All South Jersey Band, and congratulate Mrs. Monahan and her staff and students on a successful juvenile diabetes walk for the cure for diabetes. That goes deep to my heart, so I'm very appreciative for that. Mrs. Haley and your staff, thank you so much. I know what has been entailed with that budget, and I know it's not always been good, but sitting on the Finance Committee, I've gotten to see a little bit more, and I do appreciate everything you and your staff do, although sometimes you might not think that I do. I do.
Thank you.
I do believe, I'd like to wish our students good luck tomorrow at the science fair, correct, Mr. Fry? And that is at 9 a.m.?
For students.
10 o'clock?
Around 11:30, they'll
Okay.
be judging.
At the college, correct?
College, yes, for awards, yes.
Okay, so good luck to them. I would like to thank, first off, the preschool registration at Golan. They're having their fun fair on April 1st. Please try to come out. It'll be a family-oriented event, and they're trying to register all the preschool-age children that we can. I'd like to thank the schools for allowing me to read to their classes for Read Across America. I'll be finishing up my reading next Wednesday, and because the schools have been so gracious in accommodating me with my work schedule, I will be able to have read in 17 classes and 9 schools, including one of our preschools. This, folks, is why I'm sitting here. I know I can't get to every event in the district, but I sure try hard to get to as many as I can. It's all about our students, and I love seeing them involved and accomplishing great things. The smiles on their faces don't hurt. Thank you, God bless, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Mr. Madio?
My turn?
Yeah, your turn.
Well, I would make a reference to Jethro Bodine, but I don't think anybody out there except the old people would know what I'm talking about. but I am going to cipher a little bit. There was a real nice article in the paper about Mr. Pagano. Congratulations on getting the job in Florida, and I hope you enjoy yourself. I don't know why you're staying until April the 8th, but that's something that you decided to do. But I think that when you put something in the paper, it should be right. So I'm going to read your quote. When you're talking over $1 million for grass that's going to benefit 60 kids that play, that's ludicrous. You want to talk about saving money? Stop pushing to spend that $1 million on fake grass. Now, if you'd come to a meeting once in a while, you'd know that last week I made it very clear. Well, maybe Mrs. Haley can make it clear. Is that $1 million in the budget?
No, it is not.
It's not in the budget. And I made it clear last week it wasn't in the budget. And I made it clear last week that we don't have that kind of money. Not that we don't have that kind of money. I would have no problem spending the $465,000 that we're spending on armed guards and the $750,000 or $800,000 we're spending on Landis, on our kids. But that's not really that important. The point is, I never pushed to spend $1 million in the budget. But what really is important to me is that it's going to benefit 60 kids. Now, I don't know what football teams we're talking about, because the Vineland football team has about 100 football players. So if we start out with 100, that's a little more than 60. And then if we go and consider that boys and girls soccer can play on that field, I figured that was about 15 per team, and I think there's 6 teams, 3 of each. So that's 90 people. Then, of course, we also have these little kids in Vineland, real little ones, 5, 6, 8, and they play football, and they could play on that field. Now, the Blitz football program has about 200 kids, so that brings me up to 390 kids. And then there's a midget league that has about 120 over at 3rd Street, and they could play on that field, and they're all Vineland kids. So what's that bring? This number is getting a little higher. I'm having trouble here.
Mr.
That's
Median, I
510
think
people.
Your point's made.
My point's going to be made. You're correct. Lacrosse can play there. Field hockey can play there. So if we are lucky enough to have someone donate the $1 million for this field, just remember that's over 500 kids, Vineland kids basically, who are using that field. And then there's probably another 500 from the opposition because they play against other kids. And when you have graduation there, which you use it for, it would be a nice looking field instead of the ratty thing that we have now. So I think that instead of disparaging the $1 million, which may actually have hurt our chances of getting the donation, I think everybody on this board should be celebrating the fact that we have successful programs, and we should invest whatever we have to into them to make them more successful. Thank you.
Ms. Rios.
Mr. Jennings.
Yes, Mr. Pagano.
Now, a lot of talking was done during that interview, and select words were put out. I don't think anybody actually named you as saying anything or doing anything. And as far as our children go, I have great admiration for our sports. I think Mr. Russo does a wonderful job. We have a great football team. Now, I made some generalizations. And when I talk about $1 million, I never said it was coming out of the budget. But if you can raise $1 million for one thing, you can raise $1 million for something else. I would love to sit here and debate with you, although, unfortunately, unlike you, I have a life. Maybe you should get a life so you don't have to spend all day writing that shit up to come here and talk to me about.
Mr. Pagano. We can finish
Writing
this
what up?
We can finish this
Writing your junk up, all right?
Oh.
So, I mean, if you wanted to get into it tonight, that's
Finish
fine.
this later.
We will finish it later.
Please. Let's move on. Ms. Rios, you have anything?
I'm going to behave tonight because I do have a lot of comments about the whole agenda and several comments that were made by other individuals. But I'm going to behave tonight and not say anything. I do want to thank the Daily Journal for the first time in, I don't know when, because they do keep us informed as to what's taking place in this district, and that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rios. On that note, I am going to ask for Mr. Frangipani if he has anything.
I do.
First, what happened?
Mr. Soprano.
Mr. Soprano.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. And John.
Oh.
Hello?
Hey, John, go ahead, John. I'm sorry. Hold on, Jeff. Hold on, John.
If I said anything, so that's why you passed me by.
Hold on a second. Jeff, are you still with us? I don't think so. All right, John, go ahead.
Huh?
Let the record show that.
Oh.
Okay, John, we're with you, bro. Go ahead.
Congratulations to the folks from Veterans School and also to Mrs. Monahan and her group for the juvenile diabetes fundraiser. Obviously, I have some strong beliefs about the Landis School project, but they go beyond the actual work and go to process. And I'd like to have a conversation about that at another time, but not tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sobrana. Mr. Frangipani?
Thank you. I just want to thank the board for allowing me to serve as acting superintendent in Mary's absence. I'm truly humbled by it, and of course I'll try to do my best to make every day count for the children and for our teachers for the work that they do every day. Of course, I want to wish Dr. Gruccio a speedy recovery so she can get back in this seat. But again, on behalf of myself, central administration, we do have a great team. We will continue to work with parents, students, teachers, and our principals to make sure our schools are safe and children have the opportunity to learn. So, thank you all.
Okay. Do I have a motion for
So
adjournment?
moved.
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
One more thing, it was very nice to hear Jeff's voice tonight, and I wish him a full speed recovery. I know he's been having some health difficulties, and also Dr. Gruccio.
Thank you, John.